Hey, Mike McAllister is joining us. Are you hungover from your Eagles win?
No, there was no drinking last night. The only drinking that would have happened is if they had lost. But thankfully, it was. I know you guys said that it was an awful game. For me, it was not an awful game because there wasn't much stress involved, which made it much more enjoyable to watch. But it was cool to be able to sit and watch it with my son. Watch the whole game. When they won several years ago, he was only 2 at the time, and so he didn't stay up for it. He was asleep, and I did go up and wake him up to bring him downstairs to watch the last play, just because I wasn't sure they'd ever win it again, so that I can say, hey, at least you witnessed it. This time, though, he got to watch the whole game and was, high-fiving with me and all that type of stuff. That was really cool, and yeah, obviously very excited about the result of it.
See, Paulie, I want that. That's what he's talking about. I want that next year. I want that next year with the Bills.
I want that with the Padres.
Yeah, I know. I'm so jealous, Mike,
I would
that
make
you
my
have
dog sit and watch
the
final out of a World Series. I'd take it with the Sixers, too. It's been since 1983.
Yeah. It's been since forever for the Bills. So I want that desperately, Mike. So anyway, congratulations. I'm glad you got that because that's what it's all about, right? It's like passing it on to your son. And, man, that makes me jealous. But I'm really glad that you got to share that.
Brainwashing a kid into liking a team with a horrible fan base.
Glad you got to share that moment with him. All right, let's talk about what we saw on Saturday. And I think we would all agree that Syracuse and BC are, they're both struggling this year, obviously. But I said it was an entertaining game. It went to 3 overtimes. I mean, what do you take away from that? The good, the bad, and the ugly from what you saw on Saturday.
Hey, it's funny. I was driving in the car with my son while you guys were talking about that being entertaining versus not entertaining. And when Steve said it was an entertaining game, my son looked at me and rolled his eyes because he was very frustrated with the fact that it kept going in overtime. But, I kind of am with Paulie in that in some senses it was really not entertaining at all. It was awful to watch. And then in others, it was very entertaining. I thought the overtimes were pretty entertaining. But this was a game where, in all reality, Syracuse was about 8 to 10 points better than Boston College, and they probably win by somewhere in the 6 to 10 point range if they can make free throws at the end of the game. Now they didn't, and then they botched the last 5 seconds to even get to overtime, but they were the better team in my opinion. I thought that was a 3 to 4 possession win for them if they, take care of things the way that you should down the stretch of the game. But ultimately they end up getting a win, and I think it was an important win for them. They're trying to build some momentum as they get down the stretch of the season. And given some of the teams that are on the schedule, I think that there is still a shot that they could end up with a 500 or better record. I know that's not the standard. That's not what fans want. But just looking at where this team is right now and where this team is, that's kind of what you're looking for and hoping that will give you some momentum and, maybe a couple of these guys that you're not sure whether or not they're going to come back or look towards the portal or look to go pro, maybe they'll take a second look if they can finish the season in a somewhat positive fashion.
Jair Davis, 16 points, 5 rebounds. I turned to Paulie during one of our breaks here and I said, is he the best transfer that is on the team right now? And I know the stats would say otherwise, right? The stats would say Eddie Lampkin, and he's been steady. But Jair, especially of late, has turned into an offensive threat. And they obviously liked, a matchup in that BC game. They kept feeding it to him, and he kept converting. What do you make of his play of late and how important he's kind of become to this team?
Well, with no Donnie Freeman, I think he becomes significantly more important. Not to say he wasn't important when Freeman was healthy, but without Donnie there, it limits what you can do in terms of your rotation and some of the different lineups you can throw out there. And so he's got to play a lot more minutes, and they need him to score because they were counting on Donnie Freeman to do some of the scoring for him. And without him out there and now done for the year, they need Jair Davis to be that. And yeah, you're right. They liked the matchup they had because I think they thought that he was more physical and stronger than basically anyone on Boston College that could defend him outside of throwing their big on him. And if you do that, then you've got Eddie Lampkin on a much weaker defender. And so that puts them at a disadvantage. That's going to be the case in a lot of games that they play down the stretch of the season. So I think Jair Davis has to continue to be aggressive, continue to attack the basket, make some plays underneath the rim, and then if he can get a couple of those mid-range jumpers to go as well, that really takes his game to the next level.
All right, so this team goes from being in danger of missing the ACC tournament to now, win tomorrow, and if certain things go a certain way, you could be looking at Syracuse as the number 8 or 9 team in the conference right now. What do you think is realistic for where this team can finish in the conference standings? Given what's left, and again, their schedule is relatively manageable. What do you think is reasonable for this team to finish up at?
I think anything in, from basically position 7 down is realistic because, as you mentioned, it's favorable that they play teams like Virginia Tech, Miami that aren't good, and you should go into those games thinking you should win them. I know North Carolina has been down a little bit this year, and you get them at the Dome, but that's not a game where I look at and say, I think Syracuse should definitely win that game. Now, they certainly could. That's not a game you look at as an overwhelming matchup disadvantage, but I think that's still going to be a tough game. Either way, they've got an opportunity. I think if you're looking to try to make some sort of a run in the ACC tournament, you just want to avoid Duke as long as possible. I think that's the number one thing. And so being the 8-9 seed and getting a bye would be good in one respect. It would be bad in that if you win that game, you're playing Duke. So if you could be the 10 seed or the 7 seed, I almost think you'd be in a better spot because then you can avoid playing Duke until and unless you were to advance to the conference championship game, and then maybe someone like a Clemson or someone like that can knock them off early, and then you get a little bit better of a matchup. I don't think that Syracuse playing Duke in the ACC tournament, I don't think that would go well. I think we'd kind of see a repeat of what we saw in the Dome, perhaps even a little worse. So if you can avoid them as long as possible, if you're trying to make a run and get something magical going and see what happens, then if you can pick your spot, I think you'd prefer to move up to the 7 seed as sort of your ceiling in order to avoid them until the last possible second.
What do you make of this matchup tomorrow at Miami? I was a little bit surprised to see ESPN Analytics has Miami favored in this game. Miami's just 1-11 conference play, 5-18 overall. I know all road games are tough. What are you expecting tomorrow night?
I'm expecting that this is a game where if Syracuse plays to their capabilities, that they should win the game. Miami's a train wreck. They're not good. A lot of the things that we have been critical about Syracuse, unforced turnovers and poor shooting and things like that, are things that Miami is as bad or worse, and they don't have as many strengths as what Syracuse does. And so I think this is matchup-wise a game that, as a Syracuse fan, you should go into it expecting to win. And I think the team should feel that way as well. So I'm with you. I'm a little bit surprised that the analytics have Miami as given the advantage. I understand it's on the road, but Miami's not good. And Syracuse has been playing a little bit better recently. So I think going into that game, they're starting to figure a couple of things out. They're mixing the zone in here and there, getting Naheem McLeod out there for several minutes in the last couple of games. And, perhaps being able to pull off that win against Boston College, if you can then go down to Miami and pull off that win, now you're starting to create a little bit of momentum for yourself.
Are you surprised we didn't see Naheem McLeod in the second half after he gave some good minutes in the first half?
Yeah, I was surprised we didn't see him, and I was surprised at how little we saw Elijah Moore, not only in the second half, but also in the overtimes. Now, they ended up winning, and so you could say, well, it ended up working out. But, yeah, both of those guys I was surprised we didn't really see much from after halftime, because I thought they gave him some good minutes in the first half. And I know Elijah Moore is a freshman, and he's certainly makes some mistakes on the defensive end, and there's no question about that. But he was so good early in that game offensively that when they were starting to struggle to score at different times, I'm surprised they didn't throw him out there to see if, maybe they could catch lightning in a bottle again.
I got to bring something up about game experience at the Dome. All three of us were there, right? And I texted both of you guys separately and asked you, did BC just get away with goaltending on a play where it looked like a ball wasn't going down yet and they pulled the net?
Yeah.
And let me see if I'm wrong in this, guys. The Dome has to replay that video immediately, right? So everybody sees it, and it at least forces the officials to go to the monitor, right?
See, I don't know how much control or what access they have to something like that, and they could have also been unaware of it as well. It seemed like there were some people in the crowd that
the whole crowd went nuts.
Yeah, everyone in my section was going crazy. And then it looked like there were some people in the next section over from me that might have had a little bit of an obscure view that didn't really react at all. But it seemed pretty blatantly obvious to me. Every Syracuse player that was on the floor was screaming at the officials that is what happened. So I can't believe they didn't at least decide to go take a look at it. I don't know if the scoreboard putting that replay on immediately afterwards would have caused the officials to stop play and go review it. There were two or three officials. I think there were two officials that were kind of like right there staring at the play. So how neither of them saw it or didn't at least see something out of the corner of their eye to say, hey, I need to take a look at that, I have no idea. I think that's inexcusable as an official when you're watching the ball go to the basket to not see a team grab the net when the ball is going in. I don't know how you miss that if you're paying attention to what's going on.
Would you like to see replay expanded in the college game?
I mean, ultimately, I think the point of every call is to get it right. The challenge with basketball as opposed to something like football is you have sort of a natural stop between every play in football. And so it gives you some time to be able to maybe have a third party reviewing that play and say, oh, we need to take a closer look at that, or the challenge flag situation, whatever. I would almost like to have something like that be reviewable and give coaches like one challenge a half or one challenge a game or whatever it is, so that Autry could at that moment say, I'm challenging that. And then they can go take a look at it and overturn that call. Or even similarly, when it's something like that, basket interference, if they allow play to continue, similarly to what they did it a couple of times in that game where they changed a couple of J.J. Starling's 3s to 2s, and then they changed 1-2 back to a 3, they can then subsequently say, oops, that was basket interference. We missed it, so we're taking 2 points off the board from Boston College. I don't see why you can't do something like that, but I'm in favor of expanding anything that helps the officials get the calls right, to be honest with you.
I do want to hit on one thing about what I said, too. I go to a lot of the road games. If there's a close play that goes towards the home team or against the home team, the other, I know they may not be allowed to do it, but they do it. They show it immediately. If it's going against them, they don't show it. Right. So it's kind of a weird situation.
I watched a lot of college basketball this weekend, and I forget which game it was, but there was an over and back call, and maybe one of you guys saw it, where it was clearly not an over and back. It was
in the Syracuse game.
Well,
it looked like one in the Syracuse game.
Yeah, it wasn't the Syracuse game that I was watching, but it was on a fast break, and the guy was just about to midcourt, and he passed it back a little bit, but he hadn't crossed midcourt yet, and there was like 5 minutes to go in the game, and it was just blatantly wrong, but they couldn't review it because it wasn't under 2 minutes, and it's just like everybody could see that it was blatantly wrong. Like, why not have a challenge where you can get it right? I'm with you. I think I would like to see it expand. Maybe, like you said, maybe it's just one challenge. Nothing too crazy, but something like that. You got to get it right. So. All right, Mike. Great stuff as always. Appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. And congrats again on your Eagles.
Thanks, I appreciate it, and I hope that we see Josh Allen and the Bills get one in the near future as well.
I really hope so. Thank you, Mike.